Welcome to the Talking Archive. I'm Josh Jacobs, and today our guest is Tony Scott. He's a radio personality, actor, and voiceover talent, and thanks for being with us today.
Josh, thank you for having me on your program. Happy to be here.
Well, tell us about your background and how that led to a career in radio.
Oh, boy. How long have you got?
How long do you have? That's the most important part.
Well, I don't want to give you, this is my life, Tony Scott, but it did start many, many years ago. My dad worked for the government. He had a foreign service job. He was actually with the Voice of America.
Oh, yeah.
He was a technical radio officer. And right out of U.S. Army Signal School, he took a job with VOA, Voice of America. And when I was very young, we started moving around the world. We lived in Kenya. I was 5 years old when we moved there, Nairobi. And when I was 8, it was back to the D.C. area because that's where the State Department was. That's where my dad was based. And then back to Kenya when I was 12. And when I was 16, we moved to Taipei, to Taiwan. And that's where I graduated high school. And it was in my junior year that I started working at the American Forces Network, AFN Taiwan. And it's interesting how that happened because we had just moved there. We were living up on a mountain outside Taipei, and we would catch the school bus up on the mountain down into Taipei every morning. And the school bus stop was right down the road from where we lived, our first house there. And I noticed across the street from the school bus stop was this bunker-looking building. It was white. There was no writing on it. There were no windows. There was just a big tower. And from time to time, I'd see servicemen and women, people in uniform coming in and out of that bunker. And curiosity got the best of me, and I just got to find out what's in there. So one day I stopped one of the women coming out, and I said, "What is that?" And she said, "That's AFNT." And I went, "That's the radio station?" And she goes, "That's it. You ought to stop by sometime. I'll give you a tour." Well, that afternoon, off the bus, right to the door I go. The very same day, and I ring the bell, and she's not there, but they let me in. They gave me a tour, and I was hooked.
Wow.
And I'd go down. I'd watch the other announcers do their shows, and this was the days of UPI and AP teletypes and the clattering in the newsroom and the smell of the tubes, and it just hooked me. And before you know it, they had asked me to do a high school radio show for the school, for the Tigers. We were the Taipei American School Tigers. So every Saturday morning I did an hour called Tiger Beat, believe it or not.
Wow. And
then they promoted me. They gave me 2 hours. And then they started having me fill in for the other announcers. That's where it all began. It was in Taiwan.
And I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
What was the format for the radio station?
Oh, it was your typical top 40 back in the day. This was the mid-'70s. It was the days when you could flip on even stateside major market top 40 stations, and you'd hear a little bit of everything.
Wow.
Pop, rock, R&B. That's basically what the format was there. But there were other formats. There were other shows. We had Wolfman Jack brought in from the States, and Tom Campbell stateside, Mary Turner off the record.
Wow.
There were all kinds of, there were syndicated shows that we used. But there was a lot of local programming, too, which made it a lot of fun.
Was that Tom Campbell from San Francisco?
It sure was.
I remember he hosted a game show very shortly in 1980 called Camouflage, and I found out more information about him later on. He was a big star up in the Bay Area.
Oh, yeah, he was a big radio guy there. Very well known. I forget the station he was on, though. Was it KFRC, maybe?
I don't remember. It may have been KFRC, but it may have been Coit or K101. One of those big three up there.
Yeah. He was great. And so was Wolf and Casey Kasem. We did American Top 40. We had that on every week. Wolfman was great. Wolfman Jack.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, these were all the guys and gals I listened to.
And growing up, because you moved so much around, were there any radio personalities that stuck out to you when you were in the States for just a little bit?
Well, let's see. Yeah. Oh, stateside jocks. Well, my first major market gig was WPGC in Washington. And I had listened to them for years. I mean, Elliott and Woodside in the morning, and who else? Dave Fox did middays on that station, and Scott Carpenter. Liz Kiley did nights. Now, Liz went on to become the first female jock on WABC in New York.
Wow.
She really went big time from WPGC. That was big news. And she ended up moving to Philadelphia because WABC changed formats and let everybody go. Gee, you never hear that in radio, do you?
No, that's a very rare story.
She moved on to Philly to a station called Wi-Fi 92. This is before there was even Wi-Fi. And she programmed that. She brought me up to Philly from D.C. when I was let go at WPGC.
And Wi-Fi was a top 40 station as well?
It was. Yeah, they took it from Top Tracks to straight ahead top 40. Top Tracks was sort of an AOR rock-leaning format with just, the biggest cuts-off rock albums. It's basically a rock station. But they changed formats and did very well with it.
Wow. And in Philadelphia, how long were you there for?
I was there briefly. I was there 6-8 months. A new PD came in. Liz moved over, and in came another guy who wasn't crazy about me. And there I was, kicked out again. And next thing you know, I'm on my way to L.A. I figured I'm going to live in L.A. I'm going to make it if it kills me. And I ended up working for Merv Griffin Productions right there on Vine.
Wow.
Yeah, near Vine and Coing. I was just a page. Yeah. But it got me there. And then I left again. I ended up back in Washington. WPGC hired me back. And I did nights. But then they changed formats. They went more of an AC. Not even a hot AC. It was a soft AC. And I really didn't like that. And I started looking around, and I ended up at KIMn in Denver. I don't know if you remember KIMn.
Yeah, I looked as I was researching just before we did the interview a couple days ago. I saw KIMn 95. The radio station had the chicken as their mascot. I forget the name of the chicken, but somebody was actually on eBay the plush chicken stuffed animal of KIMn.
Oh, those
95.
Those were huge. Oh my God, we would do public appearances, and we would take a limited number. We would get mobbed those little chickens, and we couldn't give away hundreds every appearance, and we were out. We were very active. KIMn was. That was a great station. They were AM. They had a great signal. You heard them all over the Rockies and in faraway places at night. It wasn't quite WLS or CKLW as far as the AM signal, but they were very well programmed. 40, and I had 4 great years there, and ended up doing evenings.
Now, how often did you get to introduce artists at concerts during your time at Denver at KIMn?
Off and on. I went from KIMn to KPKE, which was in the same market. It was an FM, briefly. But we'd be out and about. A big show I introduced in Denver at Red Rocks was Tom Petty and Bob Dylan.
Wow.
That was a huge show. That show, not to take it off in too different of a direction, Josh, but that was a show. I was backstage preparing to introduce Tom and then Bob. Tom was opening. And everything's going along, and I'm up. The curtains are still closed, and I kind of peek out the curtains, and I walk back further away, and I'm waiting, and I look over. I see a head poke out of a door, and then jump back again. And I go, wow, it looks like somebody was over there. Oh, well. And then it happened again. And I look over, and the head darts back in the room. It was one of the dressing rooms. I went, that's kind of weird. It's like that guy's, like, hiding from me. And then I cheated. And I looked over real quick as he looked, and it was Bob Dylan. And he's pointing at me. And there's a big goon with a headset on. The guy's like 6'8", 300 pounds, typical guy backstage. And the guy comes over and he goes, you're making Mr. Dylan nervous. You're going to have to leave backstage. And I said, I'm making Mr. Dylan nervous? I mean, I'm 5'11". I was probably 160 pounds. And I said, why am I making him nervous? And the guy goes, it's not for me to ask. It's just you have to leave. And I said, well, I'm with the station. We're sponsoring this, and I'm here to introduce him. And I'm not leaving. And so Petty had no problems. I introduced him fine. Mm-hmm. But to introduce Bob Dylan, I had to hide behind amps.
Oh.
So he couldn't see me. That's the weirdest thing. I think my Hawaiian shirt clashed with his weed. I don't know.
Well, maybe the guard heard Dylan give a reason, but since he couldn't understand what Dylan was saying, he just said, "It's not for me to say."
I don't know.
I remember one time on Saturday Night Live. This was after Dylan was at some awards show, and you couldn't understand what he was saying. So they did a parody of it the next week where Dennis Morris says, "And now here's Bob Dylan and Tom Petty to describe the action that happened at the Grammy Awards this last week." And they had subtitles on the screen as they were talking.
Twin sons of different mothers.
Yeah.
They both, sometimes they sing when they talk, and sometimes they talk when they sing. You notice that?
Exactly. Who was the nicest musician you got to introduce?
Oh, introduce or interview?
Maybe both, or one of the other.
Introducing them, there's not too much contact with them until maybe after the show, and then they're mobbed by other people. Who's the nice? I mean, Steve Miller, the Doobie Brothers. I introduced them at the Greek Theater, and as far as interviews, now I'm drawing a blank. Stevie Nicks is a real sweetheart.
That's great.
Graham Nash, I thought he was a fantastic interview. And the guys from Santana,
oh wow,
they were great. There's others that were, prickly. Is prickly a good word? Other than the word, but I'm not going to talk about them.
Yeah, that's fine.
There was just a few of them,
Yeah, yeah. I'd rather hear about the nice ones than the ones who are difficult to work with.
Yeah.
I remember Bob Eubanks wrote a book a couple years ago where he was talking about the people who are great to work with, and he also mentioned the people who are not so great to work with. So, but I won't go there in my interviews. But now you had in 1986 were in Denver, and NBC held a nationwide search for new talent. And what was it specifically that they said they were looking for when you heard about this nationwide search?
Yeah, that was 86. That's the year I went to KPKE from KIMn. We talked about those two stations. Mm-hmm. And I had just gotten to KPKE. I was only there a few months. And I had been living up in the mountains, Josh, about an hour outside Denver, so I was up in the middle of nowhere. But then I moved down into Denver because I had gotten an agent, and she had me on constant auditions, and it got to be too much driving back and forth. So I was in Denver. She calls me one day, and she says, NBC's on a nationwide swing. They're getting out of L.A. and New York. They want to read in markets like Denver and Dallas and Chicago, et cetera. And they're not really sure what they're looking for. They're just trying to find talent. And she goes, they're going to be coming through to read here, and I've got you an audition. I went, oh, okay. So I went down. It was a part for Santa Barbara, which was a daytime drama. Mm-hmm. And I went down. There were 4 of us chosen out of a whole bunch of people in Denver. And then we read again, and two of us were flown to L.A. to screen test at NBC in Burbank. And I was one of them. And there was all the other people from Chicago and Dallas, et cetera. And I got the part.
Mm.
So the next thing you know, I'm leaving Denver, and I moved to L.A. in 86, late 86. And I did the show. It was supposed to be a 3-year contract.
Mm-hmm.
It ended up being about 4 months.
Oh, man.
They hired all new writers, changed the show. I was out. A lot of people were kicked out. And it just became, instead of a 2-family show, more of a focus on a 1-family show, which is what they told me. Maybe I just stunk it up so bad that was the reason they gave me.
What was the character that you played on the show?
Warren Lockridge. I was the son of the second richest man in Santa Barbara. So I didn't stand a chance against the rich family, the really rich family. But the guy that played my dad was Nicolas Coster.
Wow.
He recently passed away. He was very well known. He constantly worked, and he was great to work with and a big help. But he recently passed away. Just this year he did.
Mm.
So there I was in L.A. with nothing to do. I ended up at Universal Studios. Do you remember, what was it, something station?
Oh, a TV show?
No, it was a restaurant there.
Oh, Victoria Station, yes.
Victoria Station.
Yes, I remember that restaurant very well. They had a central meeting location was like the Victoria Station in Great Britain, and then you dined on different freight trains. Yeah, different cars had tables and whatnot. Mm-hmm. I ended up bartending and waiting tables there, and it was always fun to be recognized. Hey, my daughter says she saw you on TV. Yeah, here I am in a waiter uniform. Sure, I'll take my picture with you. Great. These are going wonderful. We are talking with Tony Scott about his days in Hollywood. And next time, we're going to find out the next station he went to, a major market station, a very successful major market station in Los Angeles. I'm Josh Jacobs. This is the Talking Archive. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to get the latest updates about when new interviews come about. And we'd love to have you do that. Also, follow me on Instagram at JoshDJ57.